Hello, welcome to our special Halloween episode of Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers. I'm one of your hosts, Betsy Nelson, along with my co-host, Kay Johnson. And today we're going to focus on the spooky, creepy sort of Halloween-themed book since it is October. So, Kay, when you think of scary books for Halloween, what do you think of?
Oh, there's only one. My book title in lights, Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Now that is one creepy book.
Yes.
Have you read it?
Yes. It is, yeah.
The book's creepy, the movie's creepier.
The remake's not super creepy.
Oh.
There was a remake with Rob Lowe.
Oh, I never saw that.
Yeah, you're not missing too much. But yeah, no, I do agree with you that book is disturbing.
Well, the thing that actually made it most disturbing is the vampire. Barlow. I'm close. He is described as a normal looking person. In the movie, he's with the bald head and all that, and so he definitely is not what you normally see. So it'd be much creepier if it was just someone normal than this.
Yeah, well, and the part of the book that really got me is the part where it talks about the bus driver getting on the bus.
Oh,
and then he looks in the back and all the kids. Yeah.
The worst part in that whole book is when Danny Glick is home, this little boy, and he collects monster figurines. He's got them all sitting around, and hears this on the window, and it's his mother. And he revokes his invitation, and she doesn't come in, but boy, was that creepy.
Yeah.
There's also that scene where in the movie with David Soul, where Mrs. Glick is on the table in the doctor's office, she's dead. And it's almost sunset, and all of a sudden he realizes they don't have a cross. So he tapes two tongue depressors together, and he starts reciting the 23rd Psalm, and all of a sudden the blanket starts to move. And
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Glick rises, and he's like, ah! And he burns her head with the tongue depressor cross. So what's your scary movie, Betsy?
Well, I have a bunch. I was going through my Goodreads app to see kind of what I've all read, and I didn't realize I'd read as many kind of horror suspense type books as I had. The ones that popped out right away were like Silence of the Lambs by Tom Harris. That's the Hannibal Lecter, that whole series.
Yeah.
So, Hannibal the Cannibal, right away it tells you, creepy. You're not going to want to read them more than once. My mom won't watch the movies at all. So.
I've never read the books or watched the movie. I just thought it was just too...
Yeah, and then another one I had was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which is very more suspenseful, kind of that gothic horror genre. For people who aren't familiar, Rebecca is the story of the second... What's the husband's name?
It's the House of Manderley.
Yeah. It's about the second wife of this gentleman that they marry, and she moves into his house, and there's just memories of his dead wife everywhere, and it's sort of this real what happened to her. And there's
don't forget Mrs. Danvers.
She's the housekeeper, and she's just a real
she's like
piece
Nurse
of work.
Cratchit or Ratchet or whatever it is.
From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah, definitely. But in that one, I remember reading that one in high school and thinking it was just really creepy with her, the handwriting is everywhere from the wife, and it's always, well, Rebecca would have done it this way, and just kind of coming into a house that's really not yours and having to
put up with that,
put up somebody else's real shoes that way. Yeah, no.
Have you ever seen The Storm of the Century or read the screenplay? It's by Stephen King, of course.
I think he's going to be a real repeater today.
Well, he published the screenplay in 1999, and it's a very powerful blizzard hits a fictional town of Little Tall Island, which is in Maine, of course.
Yeah.
And the storm's so powerful, it just cuts the island off from everywhere. And meanwhile, there's this horrible guy who's creeping around, the menacing stranger.
Oh, gosh.
And he appears to know everyone's darkest secrets. And what he wants is a child. And so the town gives him a child, and then he leaves. and the child happens to be the police chief's child. His wife gives him up.
Oh.
And the end of the movie, you see, like, it's 10 years later, and the police chief's walking down the street, and this guy and this boy walk by, and the father goes, "That's my son," and the boy goes,
Okay.
it's just so horrible.
You have a real theme with your,
I have
your
a real
stuff here.
theme. But Storm of the Century by Stephen
Yeah.
King.
Another one that I thought was, you got the classic Agatha Christie, and Then There Were None, which is a real creep. It's a group of 10 people stuck on an island, and somebody unknown is slowly killing them off one by one. And that was another one I thought, because, Agatha Christie is just she's the queen of mystery novels, period.
She's also the queen of murder. I mean,
It's
how many
true,
people
yeah.
has she killed off?
A lot.
A lot.
But, with that one, just trying to figure out who it could be and the red herrings that she throws. And I remember reading that one in school also. I took a class called, it was Murder, Mystery, and Mayhem, I think. So we
Okay.
just read all mystery books for the whole.
That's a good one, though. I
Quarter,
agree.
yeah.
And the movie's good.
Haven't seen that movie.
Oh,
but,
movie's good.
I did like that book, though. There's so many. You've got Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Another one I thought that was really creepy is Lord of the Flies by William Golding.
I hate Lord of the Flies.
Well, it's creepy, and
Is
it's
that with
just
those boys on the island?
yeah. I think it's a plane crashes
Yes.
onto an island, and they survive, and there's no adults,
Right.
and it's just sort of how they kind of devolve.
I hate
into
that
it.
book. I read that in school, too, and that was a long time
Yeah,
ago,
you-
and I remember hating that book. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
nothing good about. Why did they think we should read that book?
I don't know.
Must be
Somebody told me too that it was actually a book that was supposed to be written for children.
What kind of children?
British children? I don't know British children. I'm not sure. It's just what I heard. There was a podcast I listened to called Literary Disco, and they had an episode where they were talking about it, and it was interesting to hear them because they remembered reading it in high school and were coming back, and they were like, "Oh, I remembered in my brain being this really long book," and they're like, "It was like 120 pages. There's nothing to this book, but I remember it taking forever in school." And
I just know.
especially with you have the pig's head on the stake or whatever, and they're
Nothing good about that book.
no, not really.
So have you read Rosemary's Baby?
Yes.
Ooh, super creepy. A young woman becomes pregnant and her husband is not the father. Guess who is? Yeah, that's a really creepy.
Yeah.
By Ira
Well, and I
Levine.
think the movies I remember being really creepy
The
too.
movie is really creepy.
Yeah.
There's all those neighbors that kind of.
Yeah. Well, and another one along the line of Rosemary's Baby would be, the classic The Exorcist
Oh yeah.
by William Peter Blatty.
I have never seen that whole movie,
Don't.
and I
I watched it and I'd read the book first, and people were fainting in the theaters when that came out.
I know a guy who saw it
And
like 10 times. What does that tell you?
I don't want to know.
I don't want to know.
Yeah,
He
don't
probably
tell me
likes
who that
Lord of the
was.
Flies too.
Yeah. I remember one night watching, there's AMC watching it, but then that's edited out for content and stuff too. So I've seen that part of it, but I learned really quickly in college to not watch scary movies because if the other people on your floor figured out you were watching a scary movie, they then spent the rest of the night trying to prank you, like banging on your door, or if it wasn't locked, slamming it open and then running away. So, but yeah, the second one, Exorcist 2, isn't as scary, but I have seen that one too because I'm a completionist.
That's good.
As we've established with my book reading history and everything, but I think that's one that really stands out for a lot of people as being a classic, creepy movie and book. I think the movie's probably more well known than the book, though, in that case.
When you talk about watching a movie at college, your mom watched Salem's Lot alone in the dorms at Mankato
Oh.
State.
No.
No, that was so creepy.
Well, and I watched The Exorcist alone in the dorm room at Mankato State. So
Is
I'm
this a
repeating-
tradition?
It might be. I'll have to ask her. If we find
that's
out
right.
if Jill did it too,
That's
because she
right.
went there as well.
That's right.
But would you have any others you think of off the top of your head?
How about The Haunting of Hill House by
Yes.
Shirley Jackson?
We've talked about this one. You don't like that book.
The movie is super creepy. The original movie is super creepy.
Yeah.
The second remake with Catherine Zeta-Jones,
Yeah, I really liked the book. We read that again in one of my classes, and I just remember, you're just really creeped out from the beginning. I mean, she's really good at that. She has another one.
The Lottery. Did you read The Lottery?
No, I didn't read The Lottery, but she has another one that's We All Live in this Castle or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that one more focuses on like dark family secrets and other things like that, but so it's not straight up horror like The Haunting of Hill House is, so it's more of a psychological, but I think she just has a great way of writing, so I don't agree with you on that about not liking it.
Well, for people who may not be familiar with it, I have to read the description. The Haunting of Hill House has been hailed as a perfect work of unnerving terror. It is a story of 4 seekers who arrive at a notoriously unfriendly pile called Hill House. Dr. Montague, an occult scholar looking for solid evidence of a haunting. Theodora, his light-hearted assistant. Eleanor, a friendless, fragile young woman well acquainted with poltergeists, and Luke, the future heir of Hill House. Oh. At first, their stay seems destined to be merely a spooky encounter, but Hill House is gathering its power, and soon it will choose one to make them its own.
I know. Perfect Halloween. Mom watches that one. Used to watch that one, I think, on Halloween.
Oh,
because I remember one night she said she was watching it on Halloween, and a trick-or-treater came and knocked on the door.
Did she jump?
Sent her through the roof. Yep.
Oh, I totally believe it. And another one I have is It. Ooh. I'll never forget, we did not watch it, but there were lots of commercials about it. This is years ago, and my dad, your grandfather, smoked. He was sitting out in the breezeway, like at dark at night, and he was smoking, and Lynn went out there and thought it was It in the breezeway, and she screamed bloody murder. My dad jumped sky high because he didn't know what she was screaming about. So it was quite an ordeal, but that, when I think of It, I think of that.
Another like short story that I think of when I think of Halloween is you have Neil Gaiman, who wrote The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which came out, I think, last year. And it's a guy comes home, and as he's walking down the country road, he remembers a girl that used to live in this house, and slowly remembers this very fantastical kind of horror that happened to him as a young child that he'd forgotten. And so, I mean, in classic Neil Gaiman fashion, there's monsters, and they're just really nasty. I mean, I finished it, and I was like, okay, now I have to go downstairs, and I have to watch Mr. Rogers with Alex for the next half an hour to get that out of my brain.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same with, like, American Gods. He wrote that one as well, and that was had creepy moments, too. But, I mean, he's got his whole genre kind of figured out there with that piece of it.
I really like zombies, but I don't like zombie movies. I only like zombie books.
You do like zombie books.
Yeah, I just can't. There's something about seeing them that isn't quite as good as visualizing in your brain.
And what was your favorite zombie book again, Kay? We cut you off last time.
Oh, yes. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
It's a Spanish book that's been translated. Oh, I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
But it's so good. And it's only because it's the guy's going crazy, but he is normal crazy.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Another thing I thought of with thinking of spooky books is I was thinking of like nonfiction spooky. There's one that I finished reading that's called I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer. And that's by Michelle McNamara. And so she's the one who wrote the book about, the East Side Rapist and
all sorts of jolly topics.
Yeah, I know. Well, so it was in California, and they thought it was a bunch of different people, and then through DNA, they were able to see that it was actually the same person. And she actually passed away before she finished the book.
Okay.
And so someone else finished it for her, and shortly after her death, they did catch this Golden State Killer through DNA. Familial DNA. Through like, I don't think it was Ancestry.com. I think it was that 23andMe. 23andMe, yeah. So, but it was just creepy to read more of a nonfiction, real, something that happened. And
yeah, real. That's the key there. I prefer thinking it's not going to happen. I don't like that bump in the night and that it might be real.
Yeah. Well, I did post on Facebook asking people kind of what they thought about creepy, kind of what they thought of when they thought of October, spooky. We had, Harry Potter series just because of all the different creatures, kind of more your lighthearted, not quite so.
I don't know. It gets pretty dark.
It does towards the end, but not as bad. And then you have Wicked by Gregory Maguire, Wicked Witch of the West, her side of the twisted fairy tale. It's kind of become everything now. I had quite a few Salem's Lot, and somebody said Just Anything by Stephen King.
Yeah, that's true.
It's got
a lot of his stuff is creepy.
And then I had Pet Cemetery.
Oh,
was
Stephen
another
King.
one that people didn't like. So he was a big one. So I think when people think Stephen King, you think horror and scary, especially with
Halloween.
The Shining and.
I really thought about The Shining because that's pretty creepy, but the movie's worse because of Jack Nicholson.
Yeah. Did you see? There's an episode of Friends, and Joey is reading The Shining, and they go over to his house, and somebody goes into the freezer to get something, and they go, "Joey, why is The Shining in your freezer?" And he goes, "Well, I had to put it there because I was scared when he was reading it. So I don't know why putting it in your freezer helps, but I just remember that it was so scary.
Putting it on ice.
I guess, yeah. And I think some people, you have to do that sometimes. If you get really into something dark, you just have to put it down and walk away and do something else for a while.
Yeah, I agree. Another author who I really like, and I think I've mentioned before, is Jim Butcher and the Dresden Files. Those are perfect Halloween books because we have vampires, we have fairies, we have trolls, we have all sorts of dark creatures.
Yeah.
And coming and going, and Dresden's the only professional wizard in Chicago, so he deals with all these witches, warlocks.
Yeah.
And there's, I think the 16th book I think's coming out at some point. He's working on it.
Okay.
And stuff, but they are great. I just love them. In fact, Jeremy Jones, who's a colleague of mine at the Leader, and he's a Dresden fan. So just the other day we were talking about them, and boy, Jeremy's sharp. He can remember he's like you. He remembers the names of the characters.
Oh yeah.
I'd say, well, what about this? He said, that's so and so, so and so, so and so. So I need a couple people like that following me around.
Well, you can always text me.
That's true. You're just a call
just
away.
A key switch away.
That's right.
Yeah. So if you had to pick one book to read on Halloween.
Oh, Salem's Lot,
Salem's
of course. Oh, yeah, just too creepy. In fact, I was thinking I had to read Stephen King's early works because The Stand is in there, Salem's Lot, The Shining. Those are all really, I think, among his best works is his early stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point I'll work up the bravery to be able to do that.
I was kind of thinking it would be fun to go back and reread Dracula by Bram Stoker.
Yeah.
Kind of go for more of a classic kind of Halloween type theme for around then. So I'm kind of thinking I might try that book again. I remember having kind of a hard time with it when I read it in high school because I think it's written as a combination of journal and letter entries, and then some of it is.
What's the name of that fellow who was eating the flies and pulling the wings off flies?
Renfield.
Yes, that fellow. Never cared for that fellow.
Yeah. Anybody who eats flies is probably not quite right in that.
Well, I'm thinking there's a reason he's in an asylum.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny with, Dracula and all those classic horror characters from books. Now with movies, they have spoofs. So, you have Dracula Dead and Loving It, which is directed by Mel Brooks, which stars Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks and
That's
Abbott
actually
Costello, Meet Frankenstein and the Mummy and the Wolfman.
Those are great movies. They're old, but they are great movies.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the lighthearted piece with that, and I think, it's kind of fun to see when you go through Target how they have the little kid Halloween books that are all friendly, and you're like, I wish they wrote more books like this for adults.
Yes, really.
Halloween.
I instead of Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, yeah. I think it's, then they have that The American Horror Story is another big one now, and I think that those kind of tie into classic book pieces as well.
So did you like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
I haven't read that one. I've read some spin-offs of books that have been written about there's one called The Alchemist's Daughter, which is about Dr. Jekyll's daughter, and she meets up with Mr. Hyde's daughter, which that's a thing in this book. You know, Miss Dr. The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yep.
His daughter, one of his creatures is in it as his daughter. There's another Frankenstein's monster, and it's sort of how they all get together to sort of combat.
Evil?
I think they're trying to catch Frankenstein's monster, but I can't quite remember. But the name of the book is The Alchemist's Daughter, and then there's a prequel which is coming out that's about they're traveling. I can't remember the title of it, but it's something about the traveling giantess or something, because it's Frankenstein's monster. She's a woman, but she's big and tall and huge. So yeah, but people can find all kinds of ways to do. I read another book which one of them is The Clockwork Scarab, and it's Mina Holmes, so Dr. Holmes's niece. Sherlock Holmes' niece, and then one of Bram Stoker's sister are the two main characters.
Well, that's a strange combination.
Yeah, well, and it takes place in a steampunk universe, so it's really strange, but it's really enjoyable.
Well, then there's those ones like we talked about before of zombies, the Jane Austen, and then the...
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah, what's the one with Lincoln?
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
That's right,
yes.
that's right.
Yep.
So...
Well, and I think when you get more into the classic stuff, you know, like Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, all of those have the real gothic kind of creepy feel, especially with Jane Eyre, because you have the wife that's gone crazy hiding up in the attic. So, yeah, but I mean, I think
there's no shortage.
Yeah, there's no shortage of books that you can get.
That's right.
As far as that. If you have books that you would read for Halloween or would like us to consider to add to our spooky future reading list, you can check us out on Facebook at Off the Shelf Book Talk for Book Lovers, or we are on Instagram and Twitter, or you can just send us an email at offtheshelfbooktalk@gmail.com. And on that note, we will leave you till next time. Happy Halloween.
Ooh.